Hey everybody, welcome to another live over here on our channel. I appreciate everybody who joins tonight. Sorry about the delay. I actually exit myself out of the studio. So let me just check, make sure I'm live. Exit myself. And you guys can hear me. All right, so let's get started tonight. And let me turn off this music. And as always, what we'll do first, we'll jump into what interest rates are looking like, or mortgage rates, I should say, are looking like, in case anybody is currently in the market as far as buying a house or as far as even trying to sell a house. All right. So let's look at these rates real quick, and then we're going to jump into the topic tonight, which is I am stuck in my house or trapped because home values are depreciating in certain markets. Hey, Dad, what's going on? All right, so let's jump into these interest rates first. If you guys are, like I said, if you're looking to purchase or buy, we'll swoop into this real quick so you guys can see where we're at. Mortgage rates wise, conventional 6.40, fixed conventional 15-year 5.6, the jumbo 6.28, FHA 5.63, and VA it is 5.65. Again, remember that this is all based off of your own criteria, your own credentials, because everybody is different. All right. So let's get out of that and let's get into the topic that we are talking about tonight. Hey, what's going on, Miss H? Thanks for joining us tonight. Hopefully you are feeling better. I know last time you were a little under the weather. Hey, what's going on, Cotaxicita? He said, I'm stuck because I have nowhere else to go. Yeah, some people are stuck because they have nowhere else to go as far as when it comes to maybe the prices. But then there's other forms of being stuck right in their houses. So I wanted to kind of talk about this because what I'm noticing is that I'm running into a lot of sellers who want to sell their homes. Yes, much better. Thank you. No problem. No problem. I'm running to a lot of sellers. I'm having a lot of appointments in regards to, because typically most people, they're, they normally say around the spring season, that's where most time people want to put their houses up on the market to start trying to sell it. And a lot of people are realizing now that homes are depreciating where I'm at in my market. Everybody's market is different. So I don't know what it's doing in different markets, but in my market, there's a depreciation happening. And what they're realizing is that, oh, I'm actually stuck in this house, and in order for me to get out of it, I might have to bring cash to the closing table. So first, what I want to do is I want to show this video from Dave Ramsey about this gentleman who he wants to possibly relocate. He wants to possibly relocate, but he cannot. He doesn't see himself being able to do so due to him he will be able to do so because he does have savings. He does have different things. However, he doesn't want to possibly have to bring any money to the closing table, but that's what he's looking like the reality could be. So let's listen to a little bit of him talk real quick.
But I have a potential career change and unique job opportunity that would take me out of state, but it would actually be a pay decrease. And another big problem is that I'm severely underwater on my mortgage.
Oh, boy. Oh,
you're not behind on payments.
No.
Okay, so how are you underwater?
Like upside down?
Upside down, yes, sorry.
You owe more than the house is worth.
Yeah, by quite a bit.
How did we get here?
Yeah, so I bought this house about 2 years ago, and the market was really high. And I new to the whole home buying thing, so I probably overpaid for it.
So as you guys can see, it says I'm $70,000 underwater on my mortgage. How should I navigate this? And we're not going to stay long on this because he starts to talk about, his job, his career, different things that's happening, how he wants to shift. But I just want to bring this to your attention because what I'm hearing nowadays, and it's from my own colleagues as well, and I don't want to throw my colleagues under the bus, and I feel like I'm always doing that, and I apologize in advance. But I tell people you have to be very careful because what I'm realizing is that, particularly down here in the Metro Atlanta area, a lot of my colleagues are taking listings on that just to say that they have a listing, right? Just to say, hey, I'm an agent, I have a listing, look at me, it's about me. I'm putting people's houses up on the market, I'm trying to get money in my pocket. And they're not really, I don't know if they're having a genuine conversation because, of course, I'm not in the room when this is being done. But these people are underwater, and unfortunately, they will have to bring money to the closing table. Depends on what type of sense of underwater they are, right? So let's look at a little bit more about this real quick.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, houses in my area, they're really not selling well. The prices have gone way down since I've bought. So
you're underwater on paper right now, as if you sold today, you would take a big loss and you would need to come up with the difference.
Yes, and that's the problem with this out-of-state job. Yeah.
How do you have any money? Like, do you personally have any money saved?
All right, so that's where I'm gonna stop it at, because then they start getting into his financial different things as far as what he has saved, and he does have a lot of money saved. I think he had like $100,000 saved, which is great. So let me see what Miss H said. Clark, that's the sad part about all this, losing money in a home that will leave them upside down and feeling no way out. Scary. Exactly. And that's the scary part of what's happening now. A lot of people, unfortunately, during the pandemic time, the overinflation of home equity, also people thinking that house prices will never possibly come down, depending on where you're located at. Oh, did I just freeze? Of course I froze. Let me know if I froze, you guys. On my end, I'm frozen. All right, now I'm back. So if I freeze, I apologize. But that's the unfortunate part, right? A lot of people believe that home prices will continue to go up. And again, depending on where you're at, home prices probably are still shifting up. Maybe they're staying flat now. Maybe they're appreciating maybe 1%, 2%, 3%, depending on what climate you're in. If you're in the metro Atlanta area or Georgia markets, Sunbelt markets, maybe some parts of the West, we're seeing a depreciation happening where home prices are now starting to soften, right? And because of this, the people who bought during those inflated pandemic times, what they're seeing now, even with a low interest rate, they're seeing like, I cannot get out of this house. And this is where people make the mistake, right? We have different situations happening. We have people during pandemic who got low interest rates but also overpaid. So if the house was on the market for $500,000, they might have went and overpaid it and bought it for $600,000. Even though they have a lower interest rate, they're still stuck now, because if they're trying to shift out of the house, they can't, because home prices are depreciating. So I know we're hearing this big narrative outside of, oh, most people are not wanting to move because their interest rates are so low. No, some people don't want to move because they might have bought a house a long time ago, and once the pandemic happened, they refinanced, got a lower interest rate, which made them in a great position, which I saw some people do. They basically refinanced, got a 2%, 3% interest rate. They took their 30-year term to a 20-year term, or maybe a 15-year term. And because what was happening is that the mortgage was basically at the same amount. So now they can shift and hopefully pay off their mortgage quicker, right? So you have some people like that are not moving because they're like, hey, I'm not moving. I scored. I have, I'm scoring on this situation. I bought my house way before this time period. I flipped over. I got that low interest rate during that pandemic, and I shifted my terms over to a 15-year from a 30-year. And now I have my mortgage is still the same, and I'm paying off this mortgage quicker. But then you got the people who bought from 2022 to 2024, locked in a lower interest rate, however, overpaid, and may have even went above the appraisal gap, paid that cash difference, and they might have got an FHA loan, a VA loan, even some conventional loans. And you're seeing yourself now that you can't shift because home prices are deflating in some markets. And what's happening with that deflation is finding you stuck where you would have to come to the closing table and bring thousands of dollars in order to shift out of it. So you have home buyers, and I'm experiencing this even with clients that I have. Like I said, I sat down with several people that want to sell. Unfortunately, I told them I'm not the right agent for you because I can't help you get out of this situation. I would be lying to you if I was to put your house on the market and say that you could get this price for it, knowing that the market is shifting. I'm not even sure if it would appraise. You can go out and buy your own appraisal if you want to and see where it kind of puts you at. However, again, your appraisal on the seller side might look different from the appraiser on the buyer side, right? If a buyer is buying with a FHA loan or a VA loan, typically they'll have the appraiser will come out for the lender, and it could still maybe appraise the same amount, maybe appraise under. We're not sure, right? Because every appraiser does something differently. It's all very a subjective estimate of what they see and what they find in the data they gather. So we're seeing a lot of this happening even on the buyer side. They're like, hey, I see the market is shifting down and these houses are here and I don't want to pay that for it. I'm going to go and offer this price. And then the seller's like, I don't want that price. So then you see these sellers either taking the house off the market. These houses are sitting longer, and then they're slowly but surely shifting prices down. And I've even seen recently some appraisals, which it was another person who came on one of the lives. I think I was on Jackie Baker's live, and they asked, have I seen any appraisals coming short lately? And I've actually just seen an appraisal coming short as far as what that home price is. So it's very interesting. The market is definitely shifting depending on where you're at. Co-Texasita said I could put a larger down payment and have a low mortgage payment, but I don't want a mortgage. Yeah, some people could do that as well. They could, if people bought cash, of course, you know, even if the home prices are depreciating, which happened to another person that I was talking to, they bought cash about in 2023. They wanted to possibly list their home. I did a comparative market analysis on them. I said, hey, your home is what is worth now what you bought it for. They bought it cash, so technically they're not underwater. However, they're not making a profit off of a home, right? And then they still would actually receive less than what they bought it for, because after the fees that's added on from the, you know, using realtors, closing attorney fees, title fees, all these other fees, you'll be losing less than what you bought it for. So, hey, Miss H. Clark, when people are facing new homes versus older homes for sale, how is that going in your area? Also, it seems to be across the country now. Yeah, so that was another thing I wanted to talk about. And actually, let's just look into it right now so we can hit this topic. Hey, what's going on, Croy? He said, Clark, it's good to see you. I'm in Florida, coming to Georgia next month. How are you? Great. I'm doing well. Great to see you too. It's been a while since we've seen you join us live in the chat. So I appreciate you. Hopefully you're enjoying that Florida weather. I know it's a little humid down there, but I think so. But hopefully you have a safe trip coming to Georgia next month. Let me see. All right, Miss H, let's talk about new construction. Then we're going to get into this article in regards to people being underwater as well. Because I wanted to show this, because this is what I'm seeing a lot of, and I don't know about you guys. So this particular builder, I don't know much about this builder, but they're in Georgia. But as you can see, as I go closer, you can see the incentives, right? They're giving 2.99% plus up to 5K or up to 30K and incentives as far as closing costs, maybe HOA payments. I don't know how they're kind of splitting these incentives up. And this is another thing that people are going to fall into, and they have as far as new construction. And I've seen some people now trying to pay trying to get out of these new constructions. But what's happening in new construction now is that some of these builders are actually shifting their prices down, right? They're getting a lot of the newer home buyers to come in and say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to give you, everybody is harping about mortgage rates. I need the mortgage rates to be lower. Everybody got a great mortgage rate during the pandemic era. I want my mortgage rate as low as that. I've even seen some builders offer, D.R. Horton offered 0.99%, 1.99%, and it was almost on like a buy down situation. And this one, I don't know if this is a buy down or if this is a fixed rate of 2.99, but this builder is offering a 2.99 interest rate. However, people have to be mindful, if rates never shift back down to 2% or 1%, and they're always stuck at 5 or 6% in the next couple of years, how are you going to get out of this house? Because again, the other person buying the house is going to take on that new rate. They're not going to take on your rate unless some way, somehow they get an assumable loan. But again, if the loan is assumed, you have to make sure that particular that homeowner's lender is allowing you to assume that loan, and that can take a big time. And then also, if home prices deflate, it's harder for the seller to get out, because some of these new construction home prices are going down. And so now you have a home buyer trying to get out, you have a person trying to get in, and it becomes a big old mess. It becomes a thing where people are basically stuck. We have a stuck home seller. We have a stuck home buyer that wants to buy, but they're, if they can't assume it, because if you do a conventional loan on this 2.99% fixed, it's not assumable. Typically, FHA VAs are more assumable, and again, that's all based off of what the lender says. So home prices being cut as new construction, because what these new constructions do, and they've been doing recently, and I don't know if you guys seen it, they'll build a whole new community, because I've seen it even with a seller I was trying to help. She was in a Taylor Morrison community. Right up the street, they built a whole other Taylor Morrison community. They undercut it what their prices was selling over in the one that she was at, and then they built another one up the street, same exact floor plan, undercut it by about $30,000, selling those units for $30,000 less, with the 4.99 interest rate, incentives up to $20,000. Everybody shifted that way. People, some of these home buyers are not understanding that if the loan is not, the estimates at the closing table on that settlement statement, if they don't estimate the taxes correctly based off of the properties in the area that are similar, when you get reassessed next year, those taxes were based off that land tax, and now you're getting this assessment based off of home value tax, and now your mortgage shifts up. Even if you have that low interest rate, you're still going to see a shift in your mortgage, and you're also going to possibly see, which will be your escrow, and you'll also possibly see a shift in not only property taxes, but also your insurance. Sorry, you guys. Also possibly in your insurance. So I just tell people, be very careful when buying a house nowadays. Understand the numbers, because what I'm running into is a lot of people that I talk to, especially home buyers. This is what they're saying. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna be here forever. And I tell people, we are human beings. This is called life, right? We don't know what's going to happen day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. We might feel like this is our final home. This is where we're going to be at forever. This is our dream home. And then let's just say 2 years later, the spouse you moved in with passed away. I don't know. I don't want to be very, dark, but this is reality. We are human beings. Things happen. Time shifts. Situations occur. Maybe you get a divorce. Maybe you end up having children and you need to get more space. A lot of stuff happens. So we can't be stuck on a situation of a human being thinking we're going to live here forever. Some people do, like my grandma. The house that they built in Pennsylvania, she lived there her whole life. Some people live somewhere their whole life, but also that house is paid off, so it's a difference. We got to understand what we're doing, okay? And I'm telling people now, if you're buying, just don't overpay for anything. Also, make sure don't overpay. Make sure if you're taking an interest rate situation, understand that you want to put yourself in a good position where that if you have to shift in the next couple of years, you won't find yourself needing to bring cash to the closing table to get out of the situation. Hopefully that's making sense. I just don't want people to get caught up in bad situations. All right, so let's take this off the screen. So that's more, I guess, touching on your new home versus home resale. Miss H, hopefully that made sense. Code Texasita saw a new construction in Portland or around area sell for $75,000 under original asking. Yes, these new constructions, I've seen it down here in Metro Atlanta, where they're cutting them $30,000, $20,000, $40,000. I'm even seeing investors who are buying, mom and pop, small investors who are buying right now. They're flipping houses, and houses are sitting longer, and they're cutting it $100,000, $150,000. But some of these areas might not be very areas that people want to live in, and then also some of these investors are not taking into account of like where they're building at. Like one person built a house where there was a heavy traffic way as far as the street, had no garage, no parking pad, so the person would have to park on the street, and you want me to pay $500,000. It didn't sell for $500,000. It sold for like $3 something. So it's like, it's not, people can't do what they were doing in pandemic time, where they were just buying houses, renovating them, building them anywhere, and putting a sticker price on it and saying, hey, pay this for this house, right? Miss H said, when they decide to cut the price more than what they have listed and give people the quality in the build they are expecting. Now I understand they need to make money on what they build. Let me see. She said, it's not just the interest rate, it's the price of that property, insurance, HOA, how many people making 100K or more a year to afford payments. Exactly. That's the thing, right? These builders, they do have to make a profit. People do have to make a profit. The problem is that people are being too greedy and they want to make a bigger profit, right? Some of these people could get out of these houses, whether it be builders, whether it be investors, mom and pop investors, institutional investors. Some of them can get out and make $10,000, $20,000. That's still a lot to some people. To shoot is a lot to me. But they rather make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 off of a property, right? So we're seeing greed, the traditional American greed, and that's the problem. And like you said, the HOA, the insurance, all those things going up. People needing to be able to, make so much a year in order to afford houses is just getting ridiculous now. So let's go into this article. And yeah, so it's American. It's just greed. It's just greed. It's just to be honest. You know, it's being honest. It's greed all around. It's greed not only with realtors. It's greed with mortgage professionals. It's greed with builders. It's greed with developers. Everybody, especially down in Metro Atlanta, everybody's becoming a developer, a builder. You know, everybody trying to put a sticker price on it and make thousands of dollars. Ms. H said, "That's right. Greed versus common sense, Clark. Exactly." It's like everybody's being greedy. All right. So right here in this article, again, talking about people being stuck in their homes. It say they bought homes during the pandemic. Now they're underwater and stuck. So this article was by Catherine in November 3rd, 2025. So we are in 2026 now. However, this is where the courts, it says, a growing number of American homeowners now owe more on their mortgages than their homes are worth, a condition known as being underwater. While still a small share of the overall markets, the shift is most visible in places such as Cape Coral, Florida, 7.8% mortgages underwater, Austin, Texas, 4.2%, and San Antonio, Texas. So as you can see, it's not a big percentage right now. However, as time goes on, if things do not move, it can slowly but surely grow into a bigger percentage. So we'll see what happens. You know, we will see what happens. Let's keep scrolling. It says all these were hot markets during the pandemic housing boom, but now home prices are pulling back sharply, leaving recent buyers stuck and anxious. And then we go to Atlanta, which is where I'm at. Even though I have some, you know, some of my colleagues saying that we're not seeing a shift and nothing's happening. And even when I'm trying to help clients put offers in on houses, they're having this pushback. And I honestly feel like it's the realtors are not showing the sellers the offers that are being put in. I feel like they're trying to negotiate, coming back to you as if they showed the sellers. And then they're like, okay, this is what they want. But I don't really feel like they're giving the sellers the actual, you know, everybody wants to be the hero. Everybody wants to be the hero. And I tell people in negotiating, yes, we're here to help our clients. But at the end of the day, we want to make, at the end of the day, people want to feel like they won. And it's going to be on both sides, right? The buyer needs to feel like they won. The seller needs to feel like they won. It's negotiating. You know, everybody has to feel a sense of winning inside the deal. So you as a buyer can go in and say, I want $200,000 off the house, even though we know the house is probably worth $200,000 off. But you can't go in there and say that, right? And at the end of the day, the seller can't say, I want $1 million, knowing that the house is only worth $300,000. And so we're seeing a lot of some agents too that are trying to be this barrier, right? And they're not trying to actually show their sellers the contracts and the offers, and they're trying to be a superhero with a cape on. And we don't need that right now. We need to make sure people can afford homes. We need to make sure people are able to effectively get out of homes and get into homes at a decent price that makes sense, that's not overinflated, and doesn't have people being underwater with several years to come. Okay, that's what we need right now. So I'm sorry if people feel like I'm being too harsh on my own colleagues, but that's what we need, because that's what I'm noticing. And it's frustrating me, because not only do you have to have conversations with clients every day about what's happening, what's going on, to make them understand how the market is shifting, but then you also have to have that conversation with a colleague who doesn't understand how the market is shifting. So now I'm jumping over several barriers to bring everything to make sense of everything that should already be made sense of when I have people that are colleagues to me. All right. Anyway, before I go off on a tangent about that, Atlanta-based real estate agent Tim Hurl told the Wall Street Journal that he's seeing more people willing to sell at a loss because they are fearful their equity will turn negative. One of his clients had bought roughly a 1,600 square foot 3-bedroom home for about $400,000 around 3 years ago. Then the house is now on the market for around $385,000, according to the Journal. The homeowner isn't underwater yet, but the fear runs deep, prompting him to sell before the situation gets worse. So that means he probably put down a nice deposit, a down payment, so he's not fully underwater yet, but he's trying to jump ship before it heads that way. Effects on homeowners reduce mobility, and add stress. Being underwater can be both financially and psychologically difficult. Homeowners in this position typically can't sell without bringing cash to the table to pay off their loan balance. And this is what I've been talking about lately on a lot of our conversations when we jump on these lives together, that there's not a big percentage yet, but there's a small percentage that's shifting that way. I'm seeing in this area foreclosures pop up. I'm seeing short sales happening. I'm actually going to show you guys a person underwater, and sooner or later, if they can get a sale, they'll probably end up, well, they're already technically might be short selling. It's just not listed as such, because if they keep shifting down, it will be a short sale. They also, because what people are doing too, people were pulling equity out of their houses, and I'm seeing this happening down here in Atlanta a lot, where their houses are popping up on the market, but these people let's say 3 months earlier, pulled equity out their houses. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, you can't go and try to sell your house and you just pull $70,000 out of it. It becomes hard to get rid of it, because you still have your primary, the secondary with that HELOC or whatever you pulled out equity wise that you have to pay off as well. You got to pay both of those loans off. You have to satisfy those liens. Those are liens against the house. So it kind of frustrates me, but again, I'm not the person, but it's just like, what is going on? What is happening? Which leaves those who can't muster the cash fixed in place, unable to move for a new job, a better school district, or any other reason. And that's why you'll see some homes too, people that are selling, they're like, selling as is, sold as is, right? People are selling as is now because they don't have the funds to actually repair anything. So they're saying, okay, sold as is. Hopefully you guys don't ask for too much in closing costs, because I'm barely getting out of this home because I'm close to being underwater, or I'm already underwater. So now it's like, I got to sell it as is. I can't give no money, and I can barely pay the agent now. I'm so glad that a lot of these, clients now are very happy too, of the NAR thing that happened, because they're like, woo, thank you, Jesus. I don't have to pay the agent on the other side. I felt like it was unfair to pay the agent on the other side. So those buyers can get their own agents. They can pay their own agent fees. And that becomes a whole other conversation as well. But because people are in tight spaces and trying to get out of their house that they're stuck in. All right. What's more, refinancing is generally off the table, which we talked about, and people have refinanced prior, but now if you're underwater, you can't refinance too, because the lenders won't issue new loans on homes worth less than the outstanding mortgage. This isn't the first time U.S. homeowners have faced a rise in what's known as a negative equity. The 2008 housing crash left millions underwater after loose lending famously fueled a bubble. Then when prices collapsed, many borrowers walked away from their homes entirely, leading to mass foreclosures. And so I don't want to sound like, the negative Nancy, or as they call them that, I'm on here to help, educate people about real estate, make them make financial decisions that make sense, get informed, and get knowledgeable, hopefully great educational information that they can make informative decisions, especially if you're purchasing in this market. If you're trying to sell in this market, as we're shifting, as things are, in some areas, prices are deflating. It's just that you guys need to understand. I always tell people the biggest thing with real estate, understanding the numbers and reading the contracts. Okay. And then also, I know everybody believes, again, that this is going to be their dream home, but you might not be there forever due to circumstances. So you have to make it make sense when you're purchasing. Okay. Hey, Croy. Clark, do you think the market will reset toward reality, or should the government step in? I don't think the government should step in. I think the problem is right now, the government is already in the bag, right? The government has already stepped in, and what they're doing is they're manipulating so many things that the market is not effectively correcting. I think they need to get out of the space, allow for the housing market to effectively correct, allow for things to shift accordingly, and stop jumping in and putting different things, and like stop throwing out proposals of 50-year mortgages. Stop, saying like Trump saying, oh, we're going to limit institutional investors from buying. Because again, institutional investing buying is not in every state. Yes, the Metro Atlanta area, we could definitely use that down here, because we do have a lot down here. About 30% of the single family homes are institutional investors, but also you mix that with mom and pop investors down here, it's about a good 60% of our market are investors. So certain markets will see that more, but it's not a nationwide thing. So we have to stop. The government has to stop stepping in. They need to step out, and they need to pull back accordingly. Stop manipulating rates. Stop trying to go and buy in MBSs, which is the mortgage-backed securities of $200 billion from Freddie and Fannie Mac to try to hopefully bring down mortgage rates, because what's happening now is Japan, China, and Canada, they're pulling out of the 10-year treasury bonds as far as buying those bonds. So now you need to supplement it with Freddie and Fannie Mae buying those bonds. The government needs to step out of it. Let the market correct effectively. That's the problem. Even in 2008, when the housing market went into a downslide and crash, when we really should have traditionally saw another Great Depression happen, so we can actually collapse all the way to the bottom to regrow successfully, so we can normalize the housing market, the government stepped in again. They altered and manipulated mortgage rates around that time as well. So you saw mortgage rate slips into the 3s and the 4s. So for the last 10 years prior to the pandemic, mortgage rates were already sitting in the 3s and the 4s because of manipulation, which caused home prices to go back up. And effectively what happened is once we hit that pandemic, they soared even more, when traditionally, if they didn't step in, home prices would have collapsed. Yes, it's unfortunate for the home buyers. I mean, the home owners, it's unfortunate, but we need a readjustment without government stepping in, if that makes sense. So I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but yeah, so that's my take on it. To each his own. So hopefully that made some sense. Miss H said, all it takes is one bad to make the rest of the best look worse in your field, and people put their guards up many times and hesitate to know how can I trust what I'm being told. Exactly. And that's the thing. That's why I that's the reason why I'm like, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy or always bash people in a certain field, because this is in every field, right? You have a bad doctor do a situation, people are like, oh, I don't trust doctors because they did this. You have a bad person do this, they don't trust that, right? And so the thing about it is that in real estate, we already get scrutinized, because you see the TV shows, you see these people making all this quote unquote money. So everybody thinks that every real estate agent is a multimillionaire. They make 6 figures a year. I don't. So, and it creates a narrative, and it creates a thing where then people start to look at us as like, oh, y'all don't do nothing but just open doors, right? So I don't know. I don't want to go on tangent with that, but all depends on what the person's selling, what's to do, downsizing, moving with family members, etc. Take what you can get in this market and run and learn from all of it. Exactly, right? Because people have to downsize, people have to upsize possibly. People are getting divorces, people are passing away. I'm noticing that too, where I'm calling some people, because I do as an agent, and I'm probably one of those people that call your phone, and then people get sick of me. And I had a lady the other day say, lose my number. I call your phone. I just want to see where you're at, like technically right now with your house, with your real estate. And do you have any plans, in the future of possibly selling your real estate? Because things change. One moment you feel like you're not doing anything, next moment something happens and you have to shift. So I do call people. What's changed between 2002 and today? It says, fortunately, today's environment is very different. Lending standards are tighter and homeowners still have trillions of equity overall. But buyers who use low down payment loans like FHA and VA-backed mortgages are especially vulnerable to even the modest price declines. Buyers using such loans account for as much as 1/3 of mortgages issued each year. Meanwhile, some of the markets have seen prices drop 15 to 20% from their 2022 highs as higher mortgage rates slowed down. That leaves a significant portion of homeowners nationwide vulnerable to such pullback. So basically what they're saying in regards to the FHA and the VA loans is that typically FHA requires a lower down payment, right? 3.5%. You can also, depend on who you talk to lender-wise, if you do conventionals, you can put as low as 3% down. It just depends on your circumstances, right? However, with FHA is 3.5%. Also with VA, typically they don't have to put any down payment down. If you use a USDA loan, that's also 100% financing too. So when you get into with these government-backed loans and you get into these spaces as far as buying a house, you have less stake in the game. So I just told one of my clients who's purchasing a house, I said, and he wanted to, go all the way to closing table without putting anything down. I said, no, you need to put something down. Because if this market shifts lower than what you're currently purchasing this house for, even though we didn't overpay for the house, well, he didn't, sorry, not we. He didn't overpay for the house, but I'm like, even if this market shifts down, if you lose that equity, at least if you put more down into the house, hopefully it can catch up and it can even itself out, or I should say maybe, break even per se. And that way, if you ever had to shift within the next couple of years, you won't have to be, you won't be underwater, or even if you do are modestly underwater, you're not bringing thousands of dollars to the table. So I always tell people it's great to put some, have some stake in the game. And yes, for some people, unfortunately, if they bought in 2022, 2023, since they overpaid, even if they had stake in the game, because I did have a client who had put about $30,000 in. She did conventional. She didn't buy it with me. She was trying to sell it with me. But unfortunately, she just couldn't get there. The properties, she bought 415, and now the property is listed at 359 in that area. So some people, even if you put that stake in the game, depending on when you bought the house, you're still finding yourself possibly underwater. Let's see, and she did go conventional as conventional. For now, most economists don't expect a foreclosure wave, so they're saying they don't see a foreclosure wave, which I can understand the sense of not a foreclosure wave, because they also said about 40%, 30 to 40% of people's houses are paid off. They don't have a mortgage, so I don't expect a foreclosure wave on those people. I know that some of them are getting eat up now by taxes and home insurance, but if you can still effectively pay enough, you should be all right. The problem is that most of these people who have their homes paid off, they might be baby boomers and they're on a fixed income. So what they're saying now, with that shift happening, they're like, oh, Jesus, how can I afford this? Especially depending on what state you're in. In Georgia, just like Florida, we have a homestead exemption. Some states have homestead exemptions am I freezing again, you guys? Let me know if I'm freezing. Some states have homestead exemptions. Let me exit out of this over here. And we have homestead exemptions in the state of Georgia as well. So what happens down here is that you can apply for it, whether it be a regular homestead exemption when you get 62, depending on because every county is different. I'm freezing again. I'm just going to keep talking, you guys. I'm freezing on my end, but hopefully it's not on your end. Every county is different. You'll have like a senior exemption tax at a certain age, 62. You'll have a 62 or 65, one of them, depending on what county you're in. You'll have a school tax at 65. I think some of them now they push up to like 70, depending on your county. You have also if you're a disabled veteran, you have a veteran tax. So you have so many different taxes, exemption, property taxes down here that can help alleviate you with some of that property tax in Georgia. It says being underwater may remain more of a logistical headache than a financial crisis, but it's one more sign of how the housing market's pandemic sugar high is fading, and the economy of 2025, with its challenging white-collar job market and waves of layoffs, appears far more totally sound. And that's another situation. I just ran into a lender, reached out to me recently, because I also work and partner with lenders as well. And then sometimes they'll reach out to me about clients. And one lender reached out to me and said, hey, I have a possible client. They bought the house a couple years ago. They also used a down payment assistance program. They lost their job, unfortunately. They're scared of possibly going into foreclosure. Could you possibly see what the comps are looking like in the area and see if this person will be effectively able to shift out of their house? I did the comps. Unfortunately, the house has depreciated about 200. They bought at 261. Last house sold over there was 239. Equity has shifted down. And then they also owe a down payment from the down payment assistance program of $12,000. So they can't really get out the house. They're stuck. So I feel bad, because I'm like, I think people want me to help them, but I'm like, I don't know what to do. Even if I bought an investor client in to buy your house, they're going to buy it according to what either the market is showing now, or they're going to undercut it to make a ROI, which is a return on investment. Or if they have to go in and do repairs, they need an AVR, which is after repair value. And with that being the case, they're going to always undercut and shift lower with the cost. And that's not going to help you, especially if it's, if you owe more, because they owe more on that loan than the house is worth. And then also they have a second that's almost like a silent second as far as a down payment program that they use that they have to pay back. So it's a lot of different factors going on. So I tell people, if I took on all the clients that I've talked to within the last couple of years, I probably have about 20 listings on the market right now. I just can't do it because it doesn't make sense. And I don't want to waste your time and give you false hopes. And I don't want to waste my time because it makes no sense. They'll shift to other agents, and the agents will waste their time, and they'll give them false hopes. They'll overprice the house. I'm not going to do that, unfortunately. Hey, what's going on, Javon? Question: does this apply for an all cash buyer? How can we determine how much is too much for what we're paying for aside from comps? So what all cash buyers, again, outside of comps, what I'm telling people is just ask your agent, can they dig a little deeper? See how the market is trending in that area. So outside of just the comps, I would just do like a little deeper market analysis, see how if we're seeing a shift as far as, let's just say a couple months from now or a year from now, are we seeing a kind of trend down, a deflation happening? And yeah, that can be hard to see what's happening, but you could traditionally tell by how people are outside of the sold comps. You can see also how they're actively listing like newer comps popping on the market. So let's just say an area was going for 400,000 at one time, right? And let's say all the closed comps are now reading 350, and then those agents now are putting new possible listings on the market. If they're seeing a way the market is trending, depending on what state you're in, what area you're in, if that agent is understanding that the market is trending down, then when they actively place a house on the market, they're going to put it at 340, 345, 330, right? So then you can make sure when you're talking to your agent, or if you're buying, like, hey, they're actively listed. And some people are just some agents might just actively list it from what the comp sold to. So you just got to really do a deeper dive, see how the trend is kind of shifting in that area, understand the state that you're buying in, where you're buying at, really see if you can find any type of demographic information as far as if there's a negative depreciation shift happening. I know the one guy, I think it's Resi Club, and I think his name is Lance Lambert, and also I forget the other guy named Jesus. It's two wonderful guys. I think also the guy, his name is Nick. He has this thing called Reventure app, and he's showing like how markets are shifting. So I would definitely like, maybe, if you want to, I know that they make you pay money for their data, and then also but if you want to get more of an understanding of how that market is shifting, to make sure you're not overpaying as time goes on, again, what we know is that what goes up must come down, what's down goes up. So eventually, after we shift down, depending on what market you're in, we'll see a rebound, right? It is going to happen. It's just that we don't know where this correction will end, depending on what market you're in. And every market's going to get hit. I know that they're saying like, oh, it depends on where you live at, it's not going to get hit, because they're not seeing it right now in these different markets. But it's going to get hit because at the end of the day, we got to remember we need future buyers. So we don't have future buyers, your house is not going to sell. So Miss H said, so when people are stuck and can't make payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac step in. What can they do or offer to help a client in that situation of losing the home? So yeah, so typically most people, what they'll do is they'll turn around. I tell people, if you're feeling like you're stuck, you can't make payments, go to talk to your lender. See what type of situations they can do. It does suck because what some lenders are doing is they're doing low modifications, which they're basically doing is they're pushing those payments or whatever to the back of the loan and then making you come due. However, recently something had been done because of basically during the pandemic, there were a program where a lot of people were just doing that, where they were just basically to do what they were doing. They were calling the lenders. The lender was like doing these loan mods. They were pushing the payments to the end. And they said, hey, if you can make due of payments now, we'll pay these payments off that you didn't make, which basically they didn't pay them off. They just pushed them to the end of the loan, and then we'll bring you up to speed, and then you go from there. And so a lot of people were doing that, but now they put something in place where you can only do it, I think, once every couple years now. And then, but you also, in order to qualify for, you got to make the first 3 payments consistently or something like that, where now it's becoming harder to do it just because a lot of people were just doing it. They were kicking the can down the road and they weren't paying. So yeah, so typically you can ask your loan officer. I tell people, if you see yourself heading into some type of trouble, you lose your job, go to your loan officer, get a hardship situation. They help people with that as well. You have to have conversations. What most people tend to do is that they'll turn around and they'll stay silent and they don't want to tell nobody because they're going through something difficult and they don't want to feel ashamed of themselves. It's okay. We're human. We're human. We all go through things. Talk to the loan officer, see what they can do to help you out. Because what most people don't realize is that the banks, the lenders, they don't want to take your houses. They don't want your houses. They're not in real estate. They're in financing. They want to get that interest off of the loan. They don't want the house. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And that answered the question. Hey, Jay Roach, as a Rucha. Hopefully I said it right. Thanks for joining. He said, what area are you in? I am in the Metro Atlanta, Georgia area. I'm in Massachusetts. Oh, wow. Okay. I know. I don't know if you tap in with Jen Sylvester. She is in Massachusetts, and she's telling me that your market is still doing pretty well up there, and home prices are still climbing up there, which is very crazy. The rental investment properties here are getting price cuts in empty apartments. Okay, so you're more on the investment side, rental investment side. So you're seeing price cuts and you're seeing empty apartments. Yeah, we're seeing that down here in the Metro Atlanta area, in the Georgia area, where we're seeing these big apartment buildings being built. We're seeing them offering so many incentives, like, you know, first month rent, a year worth of rent, or, you know, 2 months off of rent, lower monthly rents. Single family houses, rental houses are cutting prices as well. So we're seeing a lot of shifting down here too. And we're seeing empty apartments, and we're seeing empty single family homes. And because down here in Georgia, we were seeing a heavy uptick of squatters in these single family houses, that some of these rental companies or management companies decided to go and board them up and put wooden boards and, you know, on the windows and on the doors. So people, because squatters were coming in and living in these houses. So we're seeing a lot of that too. It's shifting. And like I said, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I just want to inform you guys of what's happening. I am a real estate agent. Of course, I would love people to, you know, to be able to sell and buy and work with me to do so. But also, I'm not going to give you a false narrative or a false hope of what's going on around me. So that's just me. And if it doesn't give me business, hey, what can I do? You know, at the end of the day, I just want to make sure people understand what's truly happening. Clark, have you ever had clients where one is selling a newer home and one selling an older homes? How would that work on your part? Is that difficult to work with, new versus older? No, it's not difficult to work with. Again, it just depends on, because that was a scenario that I literally just had a conversation with last week. The client was with a newer home, and I guess it depends on what you mean by newer home. Like newer home as far as like just recently built or built within the last couple years. Because this client, they bought about 2 years ago. They didn't use me to buy. I actually was referred to them by another agent that agent actually helped them buy it. And the agent wanted me to help them sell it, because she just knows that I'm really involved in the data and understanding how markets are trending and understand numbers. So she's like, every time she has something going on with a listing or something, she brings me in, because she's like, oh, I need you to come in because you're good with the numbers and you can, you know, facilitate stuff correctly. So, but we had the conversation, and unfortunately they are underwater. So I don't know if that's, as far as that's what you mean with a newer home. But and then also the selling older home, again, it's just about pricing it correct in the right market. The client that I had about 6 months ago that I was helping sell his home, it was another home. Like he bought another home, and this was just a home that his mom used to live in, his brother was living in. So his mortgage was, he bought it a long time ago, bought it in 2004. Mortgage was, you know, dang near paid off. And so he was able to adjust down when he saw the market shifting. He was like, you know what, I'm okay with dropping it $30,000. I need to get out of this house. I don't need it. And he was like, $30,000 equating to $250,000 that I'm gonna get back. He's like, I don't care, give me the $250,000, and ran. And he just ran with it. So it's not really difficult to work it. It's just making sure you as the seller understand how the market is trending, understand where you're at, understand your numbers. When I sit down with people, whether it be sellers and buyers, more of the sellers, I really break down the numbers, because I need to see if it makes sense for them to get out of their house and what they're going to net, so they can actually see the numbers. And what we'll do is we'll do 4 to 5 different seller to net sheets. So then that way they can see, it's like, hey, we start here. If we price it here, if you have to give this, how much would you make? All the way to what the lowest could be based on what we're seeing in the area. And this. So we do all that so they can see how the things shift, and then how can we shift accordingly to make it make sense for them to hopefully get out of the property without a problem, depending on when they bought it. And then when it comes to the buyer side, most of the times I'm with the buyer side. I'm trying to make sure the buyers, and I always say this over and over to them. I'm just like, are you sure you can afford this? We got taxes that go up. We got insurance that goes up. If you're in HOA, that can possibly go up. We might have special assessments. If you're in a condo building, make sure that master insurance is on point. If I'm just like saying different things as far as them, because again, I can't assess what you're going to do as a person. I just keep reiterating it. Does this make sense for you? Even the day of the closing, when I'm with the buyers, I'm like, you okay? Can you afford this mortgage? That's what I do. And they be looking at me like, and I'll be telling them like, I know if you leave now, you might lose your earnest money, but $3,000 compared to $250,000, once that interest hit on top of that too, that $250,000, but that closing table might be like $400 something thousand. Can you afford this? And they'll say, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Even at the closing table, I reiterate it, because at the end of the day, I don't want to put you in a bad situation, but you have to do what you want to do. Ms. H said, yes. Okay. Sometimes you have to do that, drop the price and get out. Yep. Sometimes you have to do that. You got to drop the price and you got to get out. You got to run so quickly. You got to get out of it. And some people don't, they don't understand. But yeah, let's go into this last article real quick. And then I'll get you out of here, get everybody out of here on time so we don't go past this hour. This is about people who bought. This is the other forum. Ms. H said, thank you, Clark, for asking that question answering that question to potential buyers. Oh, asking that question. Yeah, no problem. I always ask that question, at the end of the day, it's not about me. So I'm just here to help you. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to inform you. And ultimately it's about you, because I tell everybody, especially buyers, I'm like, I'm not taking on this mortgage. This is your mortgage. So you got to make sure it makes sense for you. So it says meet the American stuck in their houses with golden handcuffs. So this is another sense of being stuck in your house in a different way. And this is with those lower interest rates, right? It says Rosanna Dubs, a Florida native, and her husband were well aware of risk of buying during the pandemic. So when they purchased a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom new built in Sarasota, they were conservative with their budget and choices, which I love. I love people who are conservative. They don't buy at the top of their loans, because I always tell people don't buy at the top of the loan either, even though some people do. They don't listen. To each his own. They opted for 1-floor, left out luxuries and arguably Florida staples such as a pool, spending just under $500,000, which is still a lot. $500,000, that's still a lot of money. On the 25 square foot house. But Dubs, as a product lender for Petco, says they have since outgrown the house. She works from home and the children are growing and they crave an upstairs. So this is what I said, right? We don't know how life is going to shift, how things are going to happen. And see, they outgrown the home and now they want something a little bit bigger possibly. And now it's like, how do I shift? Dubs 39 soon realized that it was not realistic, that they were trapped by the golden handcuffs. The industry terms refer to homeowners who are tied to properties by ultra low mortgage rates of 4% or under, often secured during the volatile pandemic years, meaning they are locked in and forced to stay. So in this situation, they bought modestly in a home. They got those those lower interest rates, but now they realize in her situation is like, do I want to jump from a 3% to a 7% and pay more for, even if the house is possible? Let's just say, even if the home prices are going down with a 7% possible interest rate, you're still possibly going to have a higher mortgage than what you might have at that 4, right? There's just no way of giving up a 3% interest rate for a 7%. It just doesn't make sense, Dub says. I was like, that's right, golden handcuffs, she says, calling her dilemma first world problems. We're stuck here, she says. In normal circumstances, in the normal market, I would 100% look to rebuild or look to buy again. Right now, we're not. We bought it at such a low rate, even with the equity line and everything we've done. Our total house mortgage bill is still lower than what it would cost to buy a new house today. And so now we're seeing people stuck another way, right? The people who bought a house, even if they were conservative, even if they have a lower interest rate and they can possibly afford to shift, it doesn't make sense with a higher interest rate, even though traditionally the interest rates are really not high. Excuse me. When you look at historical norms, the interest rates aren't high. It's just that the home prices are unaffordable. And so that's what's making it so unattainable for so many people to shift. According to Realtor.com reports, the average U.S. mortgage holder pays about 1,300 970 euro in principal and interest monthly. But to purchase a home in today's market, payments would stand at nearly $22,236. Those get golden handcuffs are even more constraining in pandemic darling markets such as Austin and Denver, where prices that soared to COVID era highs are now slipping fast. For those forced by major life events to sell, such as deaths and divorces, they are not only faced with tackling these higher mortgage rates, but trying to offload a home for less than they paid. According to Zillow data released last month, 91% of properties in Denver lost value in the last year. Other hard-hit markets such were Austin, 89%, Sacramento, 88%, Phoenix, 87%, and Dallas, 87%. Home values might be coming down, but for most, they are still higher than they were in these markets before the wild, wild west days of the pandemic, as Denver appraiser Jennifer Wentworth calls them. A house would go on the market one day and we would have 32 offers. People were just bidding crazy amounts over the list price, she says. They were waiving inspections, they were waiving appraisals or doing crazy appraisal gaps. I saw $100,000 appraisal gaps on some of these $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 houses. That situation was not suitable, she says, and should never have been the case. While residents remain locked in, they are trying other ways to make a happy house. Some, including Dubs, have instead opted to renovate and make properties their forever home, one bedroom at a time. And so this is what I'm noticing too, where some people are basically just adding on to the homes. They're like, okay, do I go out and buy another home for $500,000 with a 7% interest rate, or do I just call a contractor and say, hey, how much does it cost to add an addition? So they're going to go maybe figure out what the permits, how to pull the permits, how much that permit might cost in these different situations. They're just adding on to the house. If they have enough property, they're like, hey, just add it on. It's cheaper now to add on than to go out and buy something else. So this is what's happening. People are just shifting and doing those type of things. Says others are building additional, well, they said ADUs, which is the additional dwelling units, or granny flats for more space or to rent out. Governments in hard-hit markets such as Denver, Sacramento, and Phoenix have been loosening regulations about ADU construction as housing trends stagnate and affordable options remain elusive. Yes, so that's what's happening now. We're getting these governments. They're basically loosening zoning restrictions, permitting, all these things, and they're trying to make stuff where people can go out and do more, affordable options or add-ons or whatever. Kotaxita said, yep, I'm wearing those golden handcuffs. Well, you're good, Kotaxita. You don't have no much of a mortgage left over there. You're good. You're doing really good compared to some of these people who recently bought. Miss H. Clark, can the people in that situation, like that couple, can't the other but assume that interest rate from them if they found a buyer in their area? Would that work? Yeah, they could do an assumable. Depends on what they what type of loan they did, right? If they did a again, FHA, a VA, those loans are typically assumable. Again, they would have to go to the lender to make sure they can assume it, because they have to meet that lender guidelines, credit scores, all those different like layers to be able to assume that. And then as well, because there's no equity, you might not have to bring no money to the table as far as like the difference in the cash, because if there's no equity there. The only problem in that situation is that if you're working with a realtor, it's going to be hard for that realtor to get paid possibly from the seller side. So that money would have to come from the buyer side if you're working with a realtor. So I don't know. It might make sense to possibly go in by yourself as a home buyer, because I tell people too, right? You can buy and sell your own properties. You don't need a realtor. Of course, if you don't understand the process, if it's something you've never done before, if you're unsure what you're doing, then it's great to get somebody to guide you effectively. But if you feel like you do it all the time, you know how to make your own deals, you know how to write those contracts, you know how to get, whether it be a closing attorney, depending on what state you're in, a title company, depending on what state you're in, go in there and do the deal yourself. If it makes more sense and it keeps you at a good situation. Don't bring a third party in if it doesn't make sense, right? So. What else did you say? Would that work or not? Yep. So, I think I answered that question. Kotaxita, I see problems ahead trying to sell a property with an ADU on it. Yes, it definitely could be a problem, especially if it's not permitted correctly. There could be several problems, even with additions added on to the house. It could be several problems with that too. So, But yeah, so we are seeing a lot of people stuck in their houses, trapped in their houses. I'm going to show you guys this one property real quick, and we're going to jump off of here where it's a possible situation where they bought this house, and I'm gonna make it big enough because I don't want to show their name. And they're down here. Oh shoot, their name is there. Oop. Let me take their name off of here. I gotta make it real big so you can't see their name. All right, let's do this real quick so we can see. No problem, Ms. H. Thank you. Have a good night. Take care. I appreciate you coming on. Glad you got some information. Hopefully I helped with some of those questions. And this is, we're going to show this was like down here real quick, and then we're going to jump off here. So this person right here, when they bought the house, they bought it for $416. And then the loan was about $335. They recently took out another, did a loan mod or something. Either did a loan mod, looked like they might have did a loan mod or something. And now they put it on the market trying to sell it for $430, which was like, I don't know how that was happening when the market over there was showing something. And they went under contract, fell out of contract at $360 pending, price $365, back on the market $365. So they bought it $416. They took out or did a loan mod here, and now they're trying to sell it. Sooner or later, as you guys can see, this person really, if you think about it, is already heading towards being underwater. They might already be underwater if they sit down. If I was the agent, I had a conversation. Of course, I always, as far as sellers, want to know where is your payoff at, because we got to effectively be able to get you out the house. But as you can see, it's not something I'm spewing. It's not things that I'm hallucinating. This is what's happening. So definitely have your realtor, if you're buying, look at deeper in the data. Kotek Sita said, I'm thinking there are a lot of people who see an ADU as a headache. Yes, definitely people do. People will see an ADU as a headache. So I agree with that as well, Kotek Sita. Yep. But I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. Hopefully you got enough information out of it to make sense as far as if you're trying to buy or sell in this current market. Hopefully you're not one of these people that are underwater. And if you are staying in your house and you want to add that addition, make sure you go down to your local county or your city and make sure you're permitting things correctly as far as those additions, or even if you're flipping that garage into an additional bedroom, make sure you're permitting everything correctly. And hopefully if you are underwater right now as a seller, I would say you might just need to stay in that house and figure out how to make it work. Or if you feel like you have the funds to effectively get out of it before it becomes goes down a deeper tunnel, I guess I should say. Have a wonderful night. I will see you guys next Sunday, because I don't know if I'll be on here on Wednesday at 6:30. But if I do, I'll pop up. If not, I will see you guys next Sunday at 7 p.m. Thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate everybody for being here. Kotek Sita, Miss H, Javon, J. Rucha, I think I'm saying your name right, and my dad and Croy. I appreciate everybody joining the conversation tonight. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Put down in the comments if you're watching the replay where you're coming from. And if you have any questions, put it below. Also, you can reach out to me if you have questions. I'll put my stuff on the screen real quick. This is my business number, 678-995-3170, and my email, DClarktherealtor@gmail.com. Have a wonderful Sunday night, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.